Hi, Vanessa. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate the invite. My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So let's dive in. And can you please share your personal journey to becoming a egg freezing coach and what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, no worries. I love this. I love answering this question so much. It started out through my own journey with IVF, and in that journey, I was also inspired to write a series of children's books for children who are donor conceived. These books are aimed to serve, help explain the birth narrative. So these books are written for same-sex parents. I have the two mommy story. I have the single mommy story. I have single daddy's story, and I'm speaking. Actually, the illustrator's in South Africa, and she actually reached out to me yesterday, and we were corresponding today about how Two Daddy's story is coming out in November. So I'm really excited about that. And so these books got me thinking about the process, and it had me thinking a lot about women who may not be ready to have a family just yet, but would like the opportunity to do so. And so, fertility preservation, I feel it's an area that is, I think, more and more served. I think there's more and more awareness growing around it, but it's a big piece. And I think that the here I'm going to say noise. The noise of the infertility space often overshadows what I think can be a very positive experience in electing to preserve one's fertility, and oocyte preservation, and freezing your eggs, basically. And so that, to me, really inspired me to become a coach and learn through different healing modalities such as EFT, emotional freedom techniques, RRT, rapid resolution therapy, neurolinguistic programming, breath work, and hypnotherapy. Those are some of the modalities that I like to use in the coaching to support and assist women who are thinking about it, moving through it, or have done it and are came away with some insights or awarenesses that or even some emotions around the process that may not be serving them. So even the post-op support. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like that you offer the post-op support because I feel like a lot of times when it comes to women's health, you feel like left alone a little bit after the treatment, the procedure. It's like support throughout it, but then you are kind of on your own. So yeah, that's really amazing. And I don't know if you have a typical client, or what are most of your clients like younger career women who don't want to pause their career yet, or is it women a little bit older? What does your typical client look like?
We don't really I wouldn't use the word typical because I feel like everyone's journey is unique and everyone comes to the process of egg freezing for different reasons. And it's often not an easy decision to do so. I don't want to say that it's hard, but I want to say that the decision is not made lightly, and the decision to freeze your eggs is often a very layered decision. And so I would really say that everyone's different and unique in their own ways, as reflected in their journeys. And um, I would also offer that women uh, have their own reasons, and yeah, everyone's different. So the women typically are aged 32 to 38, But I was just at a fertility clinic in Lisbon, Portugal last week, and I was speaking with one of the doctors and asking what age do they recommend that women start to look at fertility preservation. And she said, this doctor, a particular doctor said ages 25 to 35, which is a little bit younger. And so quite young, really. And this is very interesting because, when you're 25, typically you're not thinking about that, and rightly so. So while the women tend to be ages in the age range of 32 to 38, I'd love to start working with women who are a little bit younger and see the investment opportunity. And that's really how I look at it. I think it's more of an investment versus insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I really like that. Um, Let me ask you, can you please explain the difference between the egg freezing and the egg donation? Because I feel like there's also misunderstanding around that.
Yeah, well, great question. I actually I made a post on my Instagram exactly about this in egg donation versus egg freezing. So egg donation is essentially the same process that one would go through in order to freeze one's eggs. So in the egg freezing process, hashtag not a doctor. So I don't give the play by play. My work is supporting the emotional aspects of egg freezing. So essentially, your eggs, or your ovaries are stimulated with hormonal drugs, and at a time where the follicular length is deemed long enough by doctors and you have enough follicles to qualify you, some doctors will make suggestions whether to go ahead with the retrieval based on what they see, a variety of factors, your age. Typically, if you're older, you're going to have less follicles. And so that means, whether they think you're going to get a lot of eggs or not. You know, the idea is if you are older, you won't have a lot. So maybe you should consider going to go ahead and go through with it, particularly if you've already done the course of stimulation medications. But that's obviously something you want to work out specifically with your doctors. So once you are at the point where you could go through the retrieval is done. This is an operation where, a super, super fine needle is inserted into the ovaries. Typically, you don't feel it. Some people report feeling sore afterwards. Some people aren't a fan of the anesthesia. But I myself, I had 8 retrievals last year, and I had a variety of experiences. To me, it really just felt like cramps. And I think there are a couple of times I felt like laying on the couch the next day, just some cramps. But sometimes I felt like shopping afterwards. So I had a variety of reactions to it. And so then the eggs are extracted, and if they are suitable for freezing, then they will quickly vitrify them with liquid nitrogen, and they're frozen for future use. You pay a storage fee, and you work out with the clinic how long you think you would like them stored. The clinic, I'm just using this recent clinic visit to Lisbon as an example. You could freeze, and every 5 years you can elect to renew the storage costs. So that is essentially the process for egg freezing. And what happens in the egg donation process is that instead of storing, those eggs are donated, and they could be frozen at that point, or they could be used to combine into embryos for IVF. And so the main takeaway is that the eggs are donated. So they are given to someone else. Although I have to say here, it's usually not given. Usually the egg donor receives some financial compensation for them. So the recipient woman can combine with sperm, perhaps also donor sperm, to make into an embryo and transfer the embryo into the uterus, or freeze the embryos. So that's egg donation. That typically is for women who are looking to go right into IVF. So yeah, different consequences. Then you get into donor conception and recognizing that there was a donor for those eggs. And some people believe through epigenetics that there is still some relation to the child, even though the eggs are donor. Because the child, the woman has the child, and so she's going to pass on some epigenetics. But yeah, so the idea is that the eggs are not yours, and so the child is not officially genetically related to you, but again, epigenetics, there will be some imprint that you will have on the child. I'm not a geneticist, so I'm not entirely qualified to speak on it, but that's really the nuts and bolts of it.
Oh, that was such a great explanation. Really, thank you so much. That was amazing. I want to touch on, you mentioned Lisbon. I want to touch on the medical tourism a little bit. And really, if you can compare the cost here in the US versus a place like Lisbon or some other places that are popular for medical tourism. And and lastly, add on, what are the fears that people have or your clients potentially have around medical tourism?
Yeah, my pleasure. Where would you like to start with that?
Maybe we just start with in general medical tourism and the comparison between cost in the US versus other places that people like to travel to.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, well, some women do elect to go abroad for egg freezing. This is done, with cost savings in mind, and that speaks to the access of treatment. In the U.S., it's cost prohibitive, especially if you're looking at doing multiple rounds of egg retrieval. There are some fertility clinics that I think Maple is one. I think CNY, they are located in several states. Those are more entry friendlier clinics. But some women do elect to go abroad. The medications are can also be fairly expensive depending on the dosage that one needs. And I think it's a great option. I think it allows more women to be able to do it. There are some employers that will pay, and you can certainly, I think stop one is to check with your employer to see if and how much they cover of the process. The second step I would take would be then to look at these more cost-friendly clinics. And then I think a third very reasonable step, or maybe the second, depending on how adventuresome you are, would be to explore the medical tourism routes. So in the clinic in Lisbon, they were quoting costs of around two 2,000 euro, just under 2,000 euro. So the dollar and the euro is basically 1 to 1, and the medications were really those were staggering as far as the comparative costs. What you'll need for medication will vary between individual, but it was anywhere from, I think the lady said it was 500 to 1,300 euro. So that's is quite a savings. I think, I'm thinking of some of the Facebook groups and stuff where they talk about the prices for medication within the US, anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000. So there's can be quite a difference. And I think it's also important to select a location where, you plan to be there anywhere from 10 days, 14 days, you on an Airbnb or some place where the nightly rate is very economical. So Lisbon, the fertility clinics in Lisbon seem to fit that bill. So I stayed in different places just to make sure. And it was very reasonable. And if you were to go to a clinic like CNY in New York, you could go for retrieval only, but the hotels there were they compared to the cost of the hotels in Lisbon. So yeah, I keep looking up because I'm trying just to try to remember. I don't want to keep it. I don't want to get too specific because there's always ways I think to work around the cost of lodging, and get creative. Be it Airbnb or even if you're redeeming points somewhere. So for me, it's I think one can easily get creative when traveling. And I think some of the fears that come up with medical tourism would be the fear of a canceled cycle. I was dealing with that, working with that with a client recently, canceled cycle, but you know, she had to travel regardless. And so luckily it was canceled before she had to travel. So it was actually her monitoring clinic that canceled. And, you know, that's why you have some travel insurance. And, I typically when I travel, I never pay that extra whatever for flight protection, whatnot. But yeah, so in this case, you would want to, where you can, take some extra precautions.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably like you can probably say how much do you really want this? I feel like the medical tourism can be that solution for women who at first think I can't afford it, but you really, really want it. So then you start looking into an option like traveling abroad, right? And you mentioned Facebook groups. So is there groups out there for women to find support who are like in the same, going through the same thing? Is there groups for them to reconnect?
There are a number of IVF groups out
Oh,
there. So yeah, like there's one, I think the CNY clinic has a Facebook group, and that's just, you could spend days in that Facebook group. There's so much knowledge and women sharing in that. And I think there are other fertility clinics that have their own Facebook group. There's and the IVF groups will also share quite a lot
Yeah, that's amazing. As far as, do you have any like tips that you can share regarding like hormonal health? Is there, I was wondering when I prepared for this episode, is there like ways to extend your fertility? Can you do certain things, or maybe you can tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I definitely believe there are ways to extend your fertility. I think the number one thing is your relationship and exposure to toxins. And there, I'll jump off and say, watching your relationship to plastic. You know, plastic water bottles are a huge no. The BPA's and all the endocrine disruptors are really harmful in plastic. That includes storing your food in plastic as well. Reheating your food in plastic is definitely a mom might still reheat in plastic, which is like tragic. But yeah, please don't reheat your food in plastic and try to avoid plastic water bottles if possible. I know it's not always possible, but when you can. Another thing too would be like your typical household cleaning products and watching your chemical exposure. Um, so much of that stuff is just again the endocrine disruptors, which are harmful for your fertility. Another thing to look at would be your skincare products. So, yeah, I love the Yuka app for that. In fact, while on my trip, I was so busy in the shops. They probably thought I was crazy scanning everything,
Oh
all the
yeah, I was gonna
barcodes.
ask. So that is the one before you buy a deodorant or whatever, you can scan and see, oh, you know what? That
Yeah,
reminds me, I used to have that app. I haven't used that. I need to make sure I still have it. I totally forgot about it. Yeah.
I love that app. Yeah, I love it. It doesn't have all the products, some of the super artisanal stores that I was in, some of the soaps didn't rate. So you take a chance. But if you make an effort and think, well, this is good to do and it's good to have done, whether or not I elect to freeze my eggs. I think it's a really powerful thing and just a way to live a harmonious, more healthy life. Just kind of washing your toxin exposure. And then there are some more fertility friendly foods that you can research and Google online. Soy is kind of a no-no. So I love tofu, I love tempeh and all the things, but I really had to cut back on it.
Mhm.
And yeah, and another thing would probably be coffee and alcohol. And
Mm.
it's tough. That's a tough one. It really is. But um I'm not saying cut out your coffee. I'm not saying quit drinking. Whatever you if you drink, or if your listeners drink, I'm not saying to completely go cold turkey with it, because it's hard. Um, so if you're going to have coffee, don't have it on an empty stomach. Just have something with it, and that'll do so much to not completely shock your hormones. So yeah. And alcohol, I was told, I like this advice. I was told by a doctor, here and there, here and there. So whatever you take that to mean. And I think that's everything with caution, including caution.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I mean, the alcohol I would have figured, the coffee, didn't think so much about it, but I love my coffee. But yeah, that makes sense. And especially all the toxins makes so much sense. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think in general, it's just, to me, it feels like it's all a newer topic, the egg freezing. Like, I'm in my early 40s, but when I was in my 20s, I didn't know anyone talking about it, doing this. So I just think it's so important to spread awareness and So women really have that option when they are in their 20s if they want to. But if they don't know that's even out there, you know, then it's going to be harder later on. So I really appreciate you sharing all this and your own experience. So where can women who are interested in working with you or just learning more about it, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. I am on Instagram, and so I mostly live there. I have a resource that is free that people can take a look at if they are interested in, kind of getting more of a well-rounded look at whether or not they should do it. It is free, and it's not one of those. I am by no means evangelical about it in my coaching. I think that it's a decision that, I would love to explore with women, and obviously, and if it's a decision that they want to make, I'm there to support them.
Really love that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on here.
Oh, my pleasure. I so enjoyed today. Thank you.